Hi, everyone, and sorry for the inconvenience, electricity. Okay, let's see. So everybody is here now, almost. Okay. Let's- Sorry, guys, I'm admitting everyone, and then I will start. Okay, we have started with literature. I will explain what the word means. Our genre in literature is short story, and I noticed that I think all of you have watched the video. And the lesson, a very interesting one of my personal favorite short stories, and we're going to read several of them this year. And note that this is in your ebook on pages 44 to 45, so you can easily access it. Okay. Now, so is everybody with me? Can you all hear me? Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now, what is literature? Literature, as you can see on the screen in front of you, literature most commonly refers to works of the creative imagination, including poetry, drama, fiction, non-fiction, and in some instances, journalism and song. Okay, even a song could be a part of literature. Writing a story of your own, that's literature. Who do you know from the famous people in literature? Who do you know? Writers, poets. Can you tell me?
Shakespeare.
Shakespeare, good. Do you see him here? Shakespeare? Okay, this guy here, the father of the English
But
literature.
your voice is lagging.
Okay, so this is Shakespeare. Here you have Oscar Wilde, another famous writer. You have Charles Dickens here, and then Sylvia Plath. All of those are some of my favorite literary writers. Now, the genre or the type of literature that we will begin with is short stories. Short stories. Okay, now what are short stories? Who can read? Ahmad, would you please read Ahmad Farhat? What's a short story, Ahmad?
Yes, miss.
Yeah.
Short story is a piece of fiction writing imagined and not real that can be typically read in one sitting and focuses on a self-contained incident or series of linked incidents with the intent of evoking a single effect or mood. Written in the 19th century, 1894, The Story of an Hour is considered one of the most famous short.
Okay, so what do we mean by fiction again, Ahmad? What's a work of fiction?
It means that the story is not real.
It's not real, it's imagined, it's created by the writer herself. Now, let's take a look at the person who wrote the story of an hour. Her name is Kate Chopin. Her literary name, her actual name is Catherine O'Flaherty, and she was in the 19th century. And of course, when we speak of the 19th century, we mean the 1800s. And she's considered by some scholars to have been, one of the beginners of American 20th century feminist authors. Of course, feminist authors are those who ask for women's rights. So I chose this story because it is important for our lesson now. Now, before we read the short story, it's important to recognize some literary devices or figures of speech. in order to be able to understand and analyze the short story in depth. Literary devices, or you can call them figures of speech, both of them are correct. Required for this lesson are simile, metaphor, personification, and irony. Now, figures of speech. What's a simile, a metaphor, and personification? You guys probably remember those. Most of you probably remember those, but just in case we have formatted over the long vacations, it's good to revise those together. So who can read? Who can read for us?
I can read
Yes, yes, please do.
from the first.
From the screen in front of you, simile, metaphor, and personification.
Both similes and metaphors are forms of comparison that compare two different things in a sentence. They can be used to make a sentence more interesting.
Okay.
How are similes and metaphors different? A simile is a word that compares two things in a sentence. You can usually tell if a simile is present in a sentence when you see the words as or like. Examples: Don ate his salad like a vacuum cleaner. But should I use all the examples?
Yes, please. Just two more.
His arms were weak and felt like noodles. The thunder was as loud as fireworks.
Guys, do you notice that we're comparing two things here? We're comparing two things using what? Like
And
as. Okay. So this is what a simile is. Now moving on, what's a metaphor? How is it different from a metaphor? Fatima, can you read?
Yes, miss.
Mm.
A metaphor compares two different things in a sentence. However, instead of saying that one thing is like something else, a metaphor speaks about one thing as if were something else. A metaphor can sometimes use words such as is, are, or was, and other words to signal that a metaphor is present. However, a metaphor never uses like or as to compare. The smoke was cotton balls billowing from the chimney. You are my hero. The sun was a furnace. His heart was a rock.
Did we use like or as in any of those examples, Fatima?
No.
Okay. So I might say his heart was like a rock. What would that be? A simile? Simile, because I used like to compare his heart to a rock. But when I speak of his heart as if it were a rock, his heart was a rock, then I am using a metaphor. That's the basic difference between a simile and a metaphor. Do you want to ask me anything about that, guys? Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay. Now personification. Personally, one of my favorite figures of speech, and I would like you guys to use it in your writings, personification. What is personification? Let's see. Abbas Shahimi? Abbas Shahimi, what? We don't have Abbas Shahimi, supposedly.
Miss,
Ahmed,
it's Sammy.
Sami, would you please read personification? Sami?
بس صوتك كتير عم بقطش عندي.
Okay, so Ahmed Shahimi, would you please read?
Yes. Personification is a figure of speech where the author gives human qualities and characteristics to non-human things. Look at my car, she's a beauty, isn't she? The wind whispered through the thin grass. The fire swallowed the entire forest.
Okay, look at my car, she's a beauty, isn't she? Obviously, I'm giving what to the car? I'm giving human quality.
Characteristics.
Yes. The wind whispered. Can the wind whisper? No, humans whisper. The fire swallowed the entire forest. Of course, we are giving personal characteristics to the fire. Okay. Now, the last type of literary device we're going to take today is irony. What is irony by definition? It's a contrast between what you expect and what actually happens. There are three types of irony. The first one is called situational irony, and I would like, let's see, Ahmed Aoudi, would you please read? What is situational irony?
Yes, miss. something happens that we wouldn't expect to happen. Examples: a fire situation burns down.
A fire station burns
A
down.
station burns down.
Okay,
Sorry.
what is a fire station used for?
Turn off a fire.
Yes, to put out a fire. When it burns down, that's called situational irony. Number 2,
A policeman who breaks the law.
a policeman who breaks the law. Why is that even ironic? Because a policeman,
The policeman, yeah.
use the law. I don't know.
yes, a policeman should uphold or protect the law.
Upload, yes.
A doctor who is
A
sick,
doctor who is sick.
hmm?
Because the doctor
Treats people.
Treats it.
Okay.
treats sick people. Yes.
Okay, a marriage counselor who wants a divorce. No, she's treating people so that they don't get divorced, and then she herself or he wants a divorce. Posting on Facebook how useless you think social media is. Okay, this is really a type of weird situational irony. You know, everybody like posts how bad social media is. Then why are you using it? You're using it to talk about it. Okay? Can anyone
Yes,
give
the
me
last one is true.
the last one is very true, yes. Can anyone give me an example, another example of situational irony?
The school application.
No, that's not irony.
A butcher that doesn't eat meat.
Thank you. A butcher who doesn't like eating meat. Yes. Good. Now moving on to dramatic irony. Dramatic irony, this is what I want you to focus on for this lesson. The reader or the viewer, think of yourself when you're watching a movie or reading a story or watching a series. The reader knows something that the character does not. Example, in Home Alone, which probably most of you have seen, we know that Kevin, the boy in the movie, has planted traps everywhere. But do the thieves know about those traps?
They don't.
They don't. So this is called dramatic
Yes.
irony. I, as a viewer, Adam, know that what Kevin has been up to, but those poor thieves have walked into the traps unknowingly. In a movie, the character, another example, in a movie, the character buys a new house he thinks is nice, while the audience already knows that the house is haunted. 3, in a play, the bride is waiting for her groom when the audience knows that he was just shot dead by the mafia. Dramatic irony because what, Adam? Who can answer this? Why is this dramatic irony?
Because the reader knows something the character does not.
Yes, the reader or the viewer knows something that the character does not. Now, verbal irony, something we do a lot. What is said is different from what is meant. I have personally done this a lot. The teacher hands in a 3 out of 10 grade to a student and she says, "I am proud of you." Am I really proud of you for the 3 out of 10?
No.
No, I'm not. I am being ironic. I am, giving a verbal irony. Verbal means by words, okay? Now, number 2, or the second example,
Yes.
a boy refuses to jump into the pool and his friends tell him that he is so brave. That is also another example of verbal irony.
Miss, is it like
But what's the difference between sarcasm and verbal irony?
They're very, very similar, and good question. Very similar. Practically the same.
Miss, is verbal irony like mocking someone?
It could be like mocking someone, being sarcastic, as your friend just said. Can you give me another example of verbal irony? We use it a lot, in our daily life. Let's say you planned to go out and the weather suddenly turned mad and say, wow, what amazing weather to go out today. You are being what? Ironic. You're giving a verbal irony. Okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are those clear? Do you want to ask me a question before we move on?
No, thank you.
Okay.
No.
Good. Now, let's go to our story. How many of you have honestly read the story? Read it? Listen to the video. Probably most of you, but have you actually read it in the PowerPoint, word by word?
No.
No,
Yes,
Adam?
I read.
Well, you should. Please go. I posted it also as a worksheet. Please go back and read it. The story of an hour. Why? Do you know why we call it the story of an hour? Do you have any idea? Because the whole plot takes place in 1 hour, the whole thing. Okay, so who can tell me about the story? How does it begin? Fatima, can you tell us how the story begins?
Yes, this.
Yeah.
First, the Mrs. Mallard's husband dies,
Mm-hmm.
and then her sister tells her that her husband died,
Mm-hmm.
which is her husband's friend,
Mm-hmm.
all told her that. And then she goes to her room and she tells everyone not to follow her.
Mm-hmm.
And then she sobs a lot and weeps.
Mm-hmm.
But then she starts to communicate with the environment, and then she felt like she was trapped in that marriage and she want to get out of it. She wants to have them, and she
Okay.
wants to live for herself.
Okay, great. First of
And
all,
then her
okay, thank you, Fatima. First of all, she learns of her husband's death. Um, Ahmad Audi, how did her husband supposedly die?
Train crash.
Plane crash? No, that was the 19th
Train.
century. There weren't even planes.
Train.
Thank you, Ahmad. Sorry, train crash. Yes, supposedly her husband died in a train crash, and so when she learned of the news, the minute she learned of the news, what did she do? How did she react, Ahmad? At that instant, it's in front of you.
She was
Okay, she. How did she
shocked.
react? She threw herself into her sister's arms, and she was very sad. And
Yes.
then what did she do after that? She went to her room.
To her room.
To her room. Did she want anyone to follow her? Did she allow anyone to follow her to her room?
No.
No. Okay,
No.
what happened in the room? This is a very important scene here. What happened there? Who can tell me? Sharif, when Mrs. Mallard, okay, when she went to her room, what happened? How was she feeling?
at first she was sad.
Okay, at first we
Miss,
thought,
hello.
yes, Sharif.
Miss, she was feeling sad.
At the
No?
beginning, we thought she was sad, and then she went to her room. She said, "Please don't follow me. I want to be there alone." What happened there? Let's read. Let's read this, Sharif. Starting this paragraph. There stood facing the window.
There stood facing the open window a comfortable, roomy armchair. Into this she sank, pressed down by a physical exhaustion that haunted her body and seemed to reach into her soul. She could see in the open square before her house, the tops of trees that were all a
A quiver.
quiver,
Mhm.
a quiver with the new spring life. The delicious breath of rain was in the air. In the street below, a peddler was crying his wares. The notes of a distant song which someone was singing reached her faintly,
Yes.
and countless sparrows were. There were patches of blue sky showing her, and there through the clouds that had met and piled one above the other, in the west facing her window. She sat
Okay, guys.
with her head thrown back upon the cushion of the chair,
Mhm.
quite motionless,
Okay. What kind of picture
except
do
when a
you?
sob came up into her throat and shook her as.
Okay, Sharif, after having read that, what kind of picture does the author paint? How is she feeling at that moment? You know, everything was a quiver with life. The birds were twittering. The sky was blue with some.
Happy.
Yeah,
Well
we're
said.
starting to wonder about this woman. Okay, what's
Yes.
going on? Would you please read Adam? She was young.
She was young, with a fair, calm face, whose lines bespoke repression and even a certain strength. But now there was a dull stare in her eyes, whose gaze was fixed away of yonder on one of those patches of blue sky. It was not a glance of reflection, but rather indicated a suspension of intelligent thought.
Okay,
The,
yes, continue, please.
There was something coming to her and she was waiting for it, fearfully. What was it? She did not know. It was too
Subtle,
subtle
yes, subtle.
and elusive to name, but she felt it, creeping out of the sky, reaching toward her through the sounds, the scents, the color that filled the air.
Okay, something was creeping out of the sky. This is an instant where the author used personification. What do you think was creeping towards her? Who can tell me?
Dark sky,
Okay, does that even symbolize?
Person.
rain,
The death
Mr.
of
Thought,
Thank you. Who said that? Who said that?
Thought.
me,
Your name,
me,
please.
Ahmed.
Ahmad, yes, death. She felt something creeping out of the sky, reaching toward her through the sounds, the scents, okay, etc. Fearfully. She was waiting for something fearfully. You know, when you have that intuition, that gut feeling that something bad is going to happen? This is what's going on. Yet there is another feeling within Mrs. Mallard. Let's see what that feeling is. Readers, any readers? Yaoub, would you please read?
Yes.
Now, now, now her
Now her yes.
bosom,
Now her bosom rose and fell tumultuously.
tumultuously. Mhm.
She was beginning to recognize this thing that was approaching to possess her, and
Okay.
she was striving to beat it back with her will,
Mhm.
as powerless as her two white, slender hands would have been. When she abandoned herself, a little whispered word escaped from her slightly parted lips. She said it over and over under uh, her breath, free, free, free. The vacant stare and the look of terror that had followed it. It went from her eyes. And وين صرت لحظة. They stayed keen and bright. Her pulses beat fast, and the coursing blood warmed and relaxed every inch of her body.
So why do you think, Yaoub, what did you think she said free, free, free? What was she feeling at that moment? Free of what?
Uh, Free from
Okay, who can
abandonness,
abandonness? Okay, free of what? What's abandonness even? Abandonment? What's
herself.
free of
Me,
herself? Let's read on. Let's
her
read
husband.
on. Her husband. Who said that?
With her husband.
Yes. Let's
Me,
read on.
Fatima.
Let's read on, Fatima. She did not stop to ask.
Not stop to ask if it were or weren't the boy that held her. A clear and exalted perception enabled her to dismiss the suggestion as trivial.
Trivial. Mhm.
She knew that she would weep again when she saw the kind, tender hands folded in death, the face that had never looked save with love upon her, fixed and grey and dead. But she saw beyond that bitter moment, a long procession that would belong to her absolutely, and she opened and spread her arms out to them in welcome.
So,
There
from
would,
what you read in this paragraph, did her husband love her?
yes,
Yes. The face that
Yes,
had never looked save with love upon her. Okay, she imagined how she would see him when they brought him with his hands, tender hands folded against his, the way they put a dead person. And yet there's another feeling that she's welcoming what? She is welcoming what? Her newfound
she's
what?
welcome for freedom.
Yes, thank you. She is welcoming her freedom. Now let's read on. Any volunteers for reading? Jad, would you please read?
I don't think Jad can open his mic.
Okay, let's see.
Go.
Hey, Celia, are you there?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
forever here.
Yes, there would be no one. Would you please continue? There would be no one to live.
Okay, there would be no one to live for her during those coming years. She would live for herself. There would be no one powerful will bending hairs in that blind resistance with which men and women believe they have a right to impose a private will upon a fellow creature. A kind intention or a cruel intention made the act seem no less a crime as she looked upon in that brief moment of illumination.
Okay, so she
Should I
would
continue?
live for herself. What kind of feelings is she getting now? How would you describe those feelings? She would live for herself.
She is strong. She
She's
doesn't need anyone.
She
she's
would you,
free. She's satisfied.
she's satisfied, she's
She'd be
happy,
independent.
independent. Okay, that's good. Could she be a little selfish here? Could you sense a little
Yes.
selfishness here?
Yes,
Maybe,
obviously,
maybe.
miss. She's
Okay,
not caring what her
okay.
husband does.
But
Yes.
I like the independent. She would be living for herself. I like that adjective.
Mm, mm.
Uh-huh. Okay,
Yes.
moving on. Who would like to read? And yet she had loved him sometimes. Who would like to read? Let's see who's with us.
Miss, I can continue.
Yes, please, Fatima.
And yet she had loved him sometimes. Often she hadn't. What did it matter? What could love, the unsolved mystery, count for in the face of this possession of self assertion, which she suddenly recognized as the strongest impulse of her being?
Okay, and yet she had loved him sometimes. Okay, so she had those mixed feelings about him. And this is where the great revelation comes in the story. Readers, let's see, readers. Samir,
Muhammad Adbo.
Samir,
Miss Muhammad Adbo didn't.
please stop
Yes, Miss.
suggesting names. Yes, read, please.
Miss, Miss, where do I start?
Free, body and
Ah.
soul free.
Free body and soul free. She kept whispering.
So she felt she was free of everything. Okay,
Do I continue?
please.
Josephine was kneeling before the closed door with her lips to the keyhole, in, imploring for admission. L-
Louise. Who is Louise? Louise, open the door. Who is Louise?
Louise.
This is my
Thank you, Fatima. Mrs. Malar is Louise. Yes.
Oh, Louise, open the door. I beg, open the door. You will make yourself ill. What are you doing, Louise? What are you doing, Louise? Uh,
For heaven's sake,
for
open the
heaven's
door.
sake, open the door. For
Okay,
heaven's
so
sake,
who
open
is
the door.
Josephine to Louise? Who is Josephine?
Her sister.
Her sister, yes. Okay, who'd like to continue?
Miss, I can continue.
Yes, please.
Go away. I'm not making myself ill. No, she was drinking in a very elixir of life through that open window. Her fancy was running riot along those days ahead of her. Spring days and summer days and all sorts of days that would be her own. She breathed a quick prayer that life
That
would be
life
long, life would
may
quite
be long.
long.
So she was staring at that window, feeling so happy, drinking in the elixir of life. Of course, this is a figure of speech. She wasn't drinking. She was drinking in her newfound life. And what did she pray for? She prayed for having
Longer
a
life.
longer life. Yes. Kamel, would you please continue?
Yes,
It
it
was
was only yesterday she had thought with a shudder that life might be long, she arose she arose at length and opened the door to her sister's importunities. There was a feverish triumph in her eyes, and she carried
She carried herself unwittingly. Okay, let me continue. And she carried herself unwittingly like a goddess of victory. She clasped her sister's waist, and together they descended the stairs. Richard stood waiting for them at the bottom. Okay, who would like to continue reading now? Can you guys hear me?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
Okay, Adam, would you
Where
continue reading?
I can if he
Yes.
doesn't want.
Okay, please go ahead.
Where did he stop?
Someone was opening the front door.
Okay, yes. Someone was opening the front. شو عم بصير؟ Someone.
Miss, can I
It was
read?
Adam, would you please read?
Someone was opening the front door with a latchkey. It was Brentley Mallard who entered, a little travel-stained, composedly carrying his grip sack and umbrella. He had been far from the scene
Who
of
is
the
Brentley
accident.
Mallard? Who is Brentley Mallard?
The guy who entered.
Yeah, who is he in the story?
Her
Mallard has
husband?
The husband, exactly.
Her
Joseph, I
husband.
believe.
He's alive and kicking. Yes?
He had
Continue.
been far from the scene of the accident and did not even know there had been one. He stood amazed at Josephine's piercing cry, at Richard's quick motion to screen him from the view of his wife. But Richard's was too late.
Wait. Why did they want to screen him from Mrs. Mallard's view? They didn't want her to see him. Because she had what?
Because she had a heart disease.
She had a weak heart. She had a heart disease. Continue, Fatima.
But
Last
Richard's
sentence.
was too late. When the doctors came, they said she had died of heart disease, of joy that kills.
But Richard's was too late. When the doctors came, they said she had died of heart disease, of joy that kills. So what happened at the end of the story? What kind of plot twist happened?
After all that, بالآخر يا miss, she died.
She died and what? What turned out to be?
Alive.
Her husband was alive and she died. So this is the plot twist in the
Died from the
story.
joy that her husband is still alive.
Okay, this is my question now. Good question. The doctors came when they saw her, they said, okay, she's dead of joy that kills. Do we know
Yes.
that she died of joy when she saw her husband?
She was so happy that so
She might have died of
happy?
sadness.
She would have lived. She would have lived.
Sadness.
She died.
You see, she was just celebrating her
She
new
was
Not
happy
really
when he
anymore.
died.
Yeah,
She found herself و100,000 شغلة يا مازن when she
exactly.
died.
Found her
Miss, now from the top.
and then
Yes.
all of a sudden the guy is still alive. And the irony is that she herself died. Okay, you see how the scene
She
where
deserves
something
it.
was creeping towards her. This is like foreshadowing of what will come. Death was creeping towards her. She had this weird feeling. So now, where is
Yes.
the dramatic irony when you read the last sentence? Where's the dramatic irony of joy that kills?
Joy.
On the
Joy
drop.
that
Make it
kills.
drop.
Okay, I want someone,
Like a
one person to explain the dramatic irony here.
Can I?
Yes, please.
At first, she thought that her husband is the one that has died, and at the end,
She's the one who died. But concerning the dramatic irony, what do we know as viewers about Mrs. Mallard's death? Why do we think she died?
Yes, from sadness, because she was
From
happy when he died.
sadness, and not
Sadness.
from joy. Okay, so the joy that kills, we know better than the characters. Okay, so quick questions to
I
you.
don't know that she.
Yes, before our time is up. What ailment did Mrs. Mallard suffer from? What did she have? Ailment means
Heart
disease.
disease.
Describe Mrs. Mallard's reaction to the death of her husband at first. Okay, she was shocked, etc. The scene, but when she went to her bedroom, we knew her real feelings. She was elated. She felt free. She
was happy.
felt independent, etc. Now, what view of marriage is portrayed in the story? This I want you to answer quickly. What view of marriage do you see? I'm gonna in this story. What kind of a marriage?
Skip what view of marriage?
Okay, let me make it easier for you. Is it a traditional arranged marriage or is it a modern marriage? Remember the setting.
I think modern, miss.
Is
I
it?
think modern.
think
She
Yeah,
said she
modern,
loved
modern.
them.
Really?
She said
Yes, modern.
She felt
Yes.
Modern. Of course, modern.
How can that be
but she
modern?
felt free when he died.
Okay, but that means what? That the marriage was traditional. The marriage was
Oh, yes,
planned.
traditional.
It was a traditional marriage. Remember, this is the 19th century, the 1800s. Okay, please read the notes I wrote in the PowerPoint about the view of marriage. Okay, she felt that she was trapped. Obviously, this was the 19th century. And let's remember that Kate Chopin herself is a feminist writer. So she believes in the rights of women. That's why she wrote this story. Now, the figure of
Yes.
speech, what figure of speech is used in the paragraph below? She sat with her head thrown back upon the cushion of the chair, quite motionless, except when a sob came up into her throat and shook her as a child who has cried. What's the figure of speech used here? Shook her as
Simile.
a child. Simile.
Personification.
Yes.
Simile.
Simile.
Emily.
Comparing her to a comparing
A child
her
who
to a
has
child.
cried.
Who
To a
cried
child.
itself.
Thank you. It's a simile. Again, please go through the PowerPoint. The rest is basically the irony in the story. Read this